Hello, everybody. Welcome to the second round of catching up. For those of you who don't know, we did a first round of catching up during the pandemic. It was mostly Instagram Live with different artists across Canada. It went very well, but then we had to stop for a while after the pandemic. And now we're back on it. Grateful to Ontario Arts Council for providing us with the craft project grant to provide us with a bit more funding so we can do this a little bit more professionally and add it to our archives. So we decided to move platforms to Zoom for a few reasons. First one being that we found the two-head conversations in Instagram Live a bit distracting. And this is, it's a visual field. So we wanted to do it on Zoom so artists can actually present images of their work as they're talking. And the second reason was that we still wanted your participation. So we're going to do a live session every time and with your participation. So we encourage you guys to ask questions. Me and Micah talked about this last night. He's okay with you guys jumping in. If you just don't mind raising a hand before you're doing that, so I can let Micah know that there's a question, that would be greatly appreciated. And if there's any questions as Micah's talking related to that subject, as I said, please feel free to jump in. If not, we do have a Q&A session at the end of this. So you're more than welcome to hold on to your questions. And then at the end of the session, please feel free to turn on your cameras, feel free to use your speakers. And that's about it. We have 8 sessions in the making for you. Mike is our first artist. Stay tuned on our Instagram, generally social media, and also our newsletter. We'll announce every artist every month. But it should be better than the first series. I'm very excited for it. Again, huge gratitude to OAC, Ontario Arts Council, for providing us with the funding. And we're just gonna get started. 6:37. Our first guest, I should say, is Micah. I don't think Micah needs a lot of introduction. He's quite a superstar in the Canadian scene, I would say. I find Micah's work personally very intriguing because I was thinking about what would be a really good opening line today to introduce Micah. And honestly, I think he's a man of all trades. His knowledge and his talent extends far beyond the jewelry world, in my opinion. He is a master of, he's a visionary, I would say, and he's a master of having an idea about a lot of, and correct me if I'm wrong, Micah, anytime you want, jump right in, but a lot of mundane objects that we might not find interesting or just find no more use than their actual use. I think Micah has mastered taking those and giving them a meaningful life. I think he is a lot of different venues he's experienced in, and he has a lot of talent in lots of different areas. I also had the opportunity to work with Micah this semester. He was part of the team at George Brown College, so I got to know him a bit better. And he truly was an asset to us and the students that were around in terms of technical knowledge, design abilities, and everything. So we're honored to have you, Micah. I'm very grateful for your time and for preparing the presentation. Also, this is the first time I'm navigating this on Zoom, so I apologize for any hiccups along the way. I hope there will be none. And yeah, I look forward to hearing from you guys during the presentation and the Q&A at the end of the day. Sorry, at the end of the session. I will hand the podium to Micah. Micah, if you can maybe start with giving us a little bit of background about your story,
Sure.
how you got here, maybe your training, whatever you want to talk about. And I will jump in here and there. I'm
Yeah.
going to
Okay.
turn off my camera just so I'm not distracting, but I'm here. So you
Okay.
just know if you need anything, okay?
Thanks.
Thanks.
Thanks, Pasha. Okay. So can everyone, what does everyone see on the
Yep,
screen?
that's good.
Just,
We can
yeah. Okay.
see, yeah,
Okay.
great.
So maybe I'll just go next slide. So this is my home studio. As you can see, this is actually a pretty nice photo of it. Usually it's a lot more like messy. but I can get into that a bit later. I think this picture was taken quite a while ago. But yeah, and then this is a work, one of my last works that I did when I was at in school at NSCAD in Halifax. It was um, based based on the just an observation of skin and how if you pull the hairs of your skin, it kind of makes this circus tent effect. So I wanted to try and figure out how to take advantage of that into a small artwork. And I am from Montreal. I'm from Nova Scotia, but I spent my teenagers in Montreal. So I kind of based this on the Olympic Stadium, and I called this my own personal Olympic Stadium. And this one took actually quite a few tries. Like this one was the good copy, but I think there were 2 or 3 iterations of me just redoing it over and over again until it looked right. But that was the third one. And this one is just an image that I include just to show like how it can look really different depending on how poorly or nicely it's photographed. And the importance of having nice photographs really was kind of the point of this photo.
Mikey, can I ask you a question before you go on?
Sure.
When you said NSCAD, were you at the metal department at NSCAD, the jewelry department, or what were you studying at NSCAD?
So I started off in sort of sculpture. My degree is interdisciplinary,
Right.
but I just slowly became more into using the jewelry studio. And to use the jewelry studio there, you have to take classes. Like the studio is locked for security. So when I was in a sculpture class, someone suggested that I
Right.
take a jewelry class or
Okay.
use jewelry studio, and that's where the better tools were. It was
Right.
more
Okay.
my sort of scale in terms of like tools and things that I was.
So you did start at the sculpture program, and just to take a few classes, sorry, just to be able to use some of the facilities from the jewelry school, you took a jewelry class, and
Right.
that's where you made this.
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Um, and then this was one of the last projects. I think the previous photo, I think this was actually taken the summer that I spent in Toronto, the second last year.
Okay.
But then this one was yeah, I tried to do it in the school and it just looked really bad. So I had to like refigure out how to do it.
Right.
And then after I graduated, I was trying to find a way of working that was really low tech. That I didn't want to use a lot of like equipment or like specialized tools. So I started mostly working with wax and just trying to see what I could do with just wax. So this was sort of an idea of like a multi-size ring
Okay.
that could like fit multiple sizes, but it turned out quite sculptural.
Yeah.
But it was pretty fun and satisfying to carve out of wax and then get them cast into different. Well, I think I did one in stainless steel, and I didn't end up finishing that one. So most of them were just in silver.
And these were all one-offs, right?
Yeah, like I would carve one, and then I carved like a little set. Maybe there's like 7 or 8 of those.
Right. Okay.
And then and I used those as a sort of like application to do the Toronto Outdoor. At that time, it was called the Toronto Outdoor Art Exhibition, but
Yes.
now it's called the fair, the outdoor fair.
Yes.
Anyway, so I used these works to get into the fair that summer.
So it was just predominant. Oh, okay. Okay, there we go. So predominantly these rings at the fair.
Well, I had a lot of other things too, but
Oh,
this
okay.
was I wanted to work on in preparation for doing that fair.
Okay.
And it was the first time doing like an exhibition like this. And it was like a big learning curve, learning how to talk to people about your work and potentially sell your work, and like learning how to like talk to people who like some people they just want to look and maybe they don't have any questions, but maybe if they're hanging around a little while, then it's sort of a cue for me to like ask them a question or
Sure.
point something out to them. But yeah, that was a really good learning experience doing the outdoor show. And then I think I did it 4 or 5 years after
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
And then from the waxes, I was collecting lots of small things, toys, things I found on the street here. These ones are made out of toy, like doll hands and
Right.
teeth.
Okay.
So I was making molds of a lot of different things.
Yes. And these are, you said, mostly found objects. And like,
Yeah.
is that a real tooth, or did you carve that?
No, that was, I probably could have carved it. But I wanted to get a real tooth. So I slowly like just had to be patient, and one sort of came my way by
Okay.
uh, so then I made a mold, and it was like I wanted to get a tooth that was like kind of like a nice example, or like a classic molar tooth.
Okay.
Um,
Yeah.
and then again, I kind of made a little series of these as well. Like there were quite a few different iterations of various hands coming out of the bottom of
Okay.
teeth.
All right.
And then so that sort of slowly led to working with coins, and specifically I wanted, again, it was like I wanted to simplify or not do like something too technical.
Right.
So that was just using a saw and cutting out designs and coins. And it started from the penny. Like I really wanted to use the penny as like to try and fit it with some other like casting projects from wax, but it didn't really work out. And I really liked cutting out these leaves, and I liked the way they look, and it was a pretty good technical exercise, like a challenge. So I liked that, and it just took a while to like figure out like an art project with it, and that sometimes happens when you're like just working in the studio. It takes some time to like develop a project,
Sure.
and this sort of became an art project when, or I guess I would call it a legitimate art project, when I made the connection between penny candy bags and yard waste bags, how they're exactly the same
Oh,
folded paper, like the same design, just at a different scale. So I thought that, well, maybe if I could fill one of those penny candy bags with penny leaves, it might be like a succinct like little artwork.
sure.
Um, um, and so I'm still working on filling the bag. This is like a long-term
Yeah.
project.
And
I
I'm
kind of
guessing,
have a few like that.
yeah,
Um,
but I'm guessing also this started before they took the penny out of our money system.
yeah, I started doing these in 2008, and then 4 years later, it was
They,
gone.
okay.
It was already kind of like obsolete at that time. Like it was like you'd find them on I still find them on the side of the road, or
Oh
like,
yeah, they're everywhere. I still have, if you want, I didn't know you're still doing this. I have a huge jar of pennies that I just kept and never returned. So it's all yours.
yeah, sure, that would
Yeah,
be great.
all yours.
Um, and I think this picture, yeah, it doesn't really, I don't think anyone really cares, but I think the difference between this one was probably in 2008 or nine, and then a few years later in 2013, um,
So no,
took
we
this
do
a little
care.
bit
We
more.
really care. I'm curious about, why is the colors different? Did you patina them, or is it just because of time?
No, I figure I kind of liked them, copper, it'll go these iridescent colors when you heat them up.
Right.
And I kind of like that, and felt that it made the project fall more into place.
Oh,
Since the copper
100%.
can be all these like autumn colors.
Yeah.
And this is actually a pretty terrible photo. I should have used a better photo. Like even the white is kind of a funny, weird gray, but they were pretty convincing as like fall colors. Um, um,
I
yeah.
mean, in your defense, just taking photographs of tiny little objects like this is already a hell of a time. So for me, this is just fine. I'm sure as the artist, you would, as you said, maybe better, but I think this is just the difference. Once you see the difference between the colors, especially once you show the two images, it's spectacular. And it didn't even occur to me that you heated these up. I thought maybe you've used the patina, but that's even like so cool.
And
That's
I think I was, I guess I neglected to say that that after I finished school, I moved to Toronto to do a residency at Harbourfront Center.
That's a big important part. Yes.
Yeah, I've sort of been a bit rushed a little bit, and skipping over things. But yeah, I think at this time I was at Harbourfront and I had used the kiln to heat color them. And then yeah, around this time maybe I am leaving Harbourfront, and getting out on my own a little bit. But I still really, I mean, I had a bench at home
Okay.
by the time, but that's about it. I still didn't get a torch or I had a Fordham and a jewelry bench, an old one from George Brown, actually.
Okay. Okay. Great. So you got into Harbourfront right after NSCAD, right?
Right.
Okay.
I was a summer resident there. Um,
Okay.
um, and then the following year, I wanted to come to Toronto again. Um, it was really hard, like starting over in a new city is really hard. It took me quite a few years to like get on my feet,
Yep.
to the point where like when it ended, like I don't think I could start over again in another town. So we've pretty much stayed put since then.
Okay.
I did have to move again when my girlfriend decided to study, but that'll come up later. Like,
Okay. Okay. Good. Then I will keep it for then.
okay, I guess it's around now. So then when after Harbourfront, I was working a lot with coins and started looking for other kinds of coins and designs that I could use. And like, well, what lends itself well to jewelry? I thought was flowers, and I was finding a lot of flowers and on coins, and then we moved to Philadelphia, so that my girlfriend could pursue some studies, like her master's degree. And while there, I went to different coin shows, and they would always have junk tables or like five for $1, like banquet hall kind of tables, and it would just be a mountain of like basically like worthless coins that you could just
Right.
go through, and I would sort through and pick out all the flowers, or like I would start to see other designs, like architecture started to like anything that I saw a theme or like repeated patterns. I would look for those things and try and collect them. And
And how
so,
did you, sorry, I don't know if you went over this or not. I got distracted for a second, but how did you collect these coins? Is it just through people or did you?
uh, well, I would go to coin stores, coin
Okay.
shops,
That's
but
what I was
specifically,
wondering.
I
Okay.
think things went up another level when we went to Philly, because there were a lot of trade or like coin shows in different
Yes.
towns. So I would take commuter trains. It was like a pretty good transit system to like these small towns outside of the city, maybe
Yes.
in New Jersey, or in New York State, because everything's really close together there. It's really different than here. And so like every weekend or like every couple of weekends, there'd be in another town, there'd be a coin show,
Okay.
and I would go to these, and there'd be a junk table, and I would sit there and go through them and see what I could find. I had a lot more time.
Okay.
Uh,
Yes. No, that's what I was wondering if you actually went or to like find these coins or just people just because if people would give you these coins, it would I think take you a much longer time to actually get what you want. But I was just wondering
well,
if you handpicked.
no, sometimes that was like a good way to like discover things. Like if someone gave me some coins, like I'm always gonna get things that I didn't know existed when that
Yes.
happened. So
Yes.
it's really nice. And that's often like a prompt for me to like, oh, I wonder if there's more of this or more of that.
Okay.
Um, so it's like a good entry point,
Okay.
um, when people like help me in that way, or give me ideas kind of.
Sure.
So this one that you're looking at on the screen, I think is made up from 4 different coins.
Okay.
Um,
Yeah,
um,
that
but
makes sense.
um, and then so then I experimented with some other kinds of coin works. Like it was sort of a technical exercise to try and cut in between the pillars of the
Yes.
of this monument.
The
And then
reason
that kind
I have to tell you this, sorry, before you go on. The reason why I remember this is so well is because I saw it and I had one of those moments where I was like, why didn't I think of this? You know, as artists, I think, I don't know if you have these moments. I have these moments every day. But this was one of those moments where I was like, this is so cool and it's so simple and it's so effective. Why didn't I think of something else? But then obviously there's a reason why you're Micah and a reason why I'm Pasha. So I just had to throw that out there. Sorry. Thank you.
Yes, sometimes it's nice when you see things like that. It's like, oh, that person sort of like beat me to it, or like,
Yeah,
oh, yeah.
exactly. That's why I was like, but I don't even work with coins, but it was such a cool idea that I was like, how do you even get there? Like the thought process to come up with something like this that is so fresh. I was like, I wish I was this one, but Anyway, sorry, go on.
So that, yeah, and like I thought after, yeah, I thought I would run out of ideas, and but like even by this point, when I made these, I would like I thought that there wouldn't how many different ideas or different things could you make from coins, but it
Yeah,
really is endless. Like
a
not
lot.
just
Me
not
too.
just the kind of like collaging or like that I do, but like yeah, there's a lot of different themes or like materials and things you could go into. Um, so I find them a pretty good jumping off point, or like prompt. Like, what could you do with these coins or any coins that you had in your hand? Like
Yeah,
even cutting out the letters and doing things with the numbers. There's a lot of interesting details that I think most jewelers would appreciate.
100%.
This one I sort of tried to change the order, so I'm going to jump ahead.
Yes.
This one sort of came first. And like this one I kind of included in the slideshow because it really was like I realized like, oh, like sometimes in your making projects, like again with the penny leaves, like you have a little sample that you've made, but you don't know how it's going to be art yet, or like how is this presentable? Is and or is it jewelry or is it a small sculpture?
Right.
These are
Yes.
certain questions that I'm like always I feel forced to like address. Uh,
Yes.
and so sometimes it can be both. Sometimes it really seems only suitable for one.
Mhm. If I'm not mistaken, you had this at Toronto Outdoor. It would have been either 15 or 16. It was the first year I was doing Toronto Outdoor. Am I right? Did you have this at Toronto Outdoor?
Probably, yeah. That
Yeah.
would, I think I made it by then.
Yeah.
And I think around this time, like along here, like I think I made this. Um, and this after I like when we were in Philly, I really committed. I was like, okay, I think I can make some jewelry and some like art projects that I need to like solder. So I bought a torch, a
Okay.
small torch and a tumbler, and felt like I could make things start to finish, and I didn't need to rely on friends or like going back to Harbourfront to use the torch or things like that.
Sure.
Uh, and I felt a little bit more independent, and I really had to be in Philly because we were really like on our own. But anyway, with this, like on the right side is a little, I had made that as like a brooch where the it's completely cut out. But I kind of thought it was kind of cool that you can see it as a coin, and I like the outside shapes. I felt like it was almost simpler just to leave it as what you see on the left, where you can see the rest of the coin. And I think that's kind of nice. Like maybe you don't know it's a coin if it's the brooch on the right.
Yes.
Um,
Yeah.
so I was kind of more leaning towards liking the coins themselves. Even though in the flower brooch, I liked that maybe you wouldn't know it's coins, and then I was just appropriating the
Yeah.
flower
Yeah.
coins. So then this one was another sort of leap forward in that, like, as a technical challenge to try and get the edges of the coins to match up
The
along with the
matchup. Yeah.
design inside. Yeah, and then so I don't know if anyone has any questions so far,
I
but
have another question. Hold on. Let me check the chat.
okay,
I I'm full of questions for you today, Micah. Hold on. Let
okay.
me just check the chat so I'm not the only one asking my questions. Chat. No questions, anyone? No. Um, you also did, I'm not sure if you're gonna touch on this later, so tell me to shut up if you are, but you also did a series of prints from the coins, right?
Oh, that's true. Yeah, and I did quite a few drawings. Like I wasn't going to touch on this, but yeah, it's great that you asked, and I
Yeah.
can definitely do that. I can talk about that right now if you want.
Yeah, I would love to.
Um, so I'll just back up because I think I ended up using this.
Yeah, this one in particular, I
Yeah,
remember.
I
Yeah.
tried to. Well, I didn't try. I guess I made an etching. So I carved it in a copper plate. Like I drew it on a copper plate, then etched it, and then um, cut it out so that it was
Okay.
round. It was like this silhouette shape. I would take my cursor and trace around and point at things, but I don't think I can do that.
No,
Um, um,
unfortunately, I don't think it will allow
but
you.
but yeah, like at first I really didn't know what these would be like, especially with this one. Like I think I made the coin like where what you see on the left. I made that as a drawing first because I thought that just the coins themselves were too small to be an artwork or to be a sculpture. So I thought, okay, I think this maybe this needs like it exists as a photograph or something. So I tried to make it as drawings, some of these initial coin collages. And then I through Smokestack Studio, which is
Okay.
run by two brothers in Hamilton, Ontario. I had the opportunity. I had worked there a little bit before with some other projects, and so I had made this etching in conjunction with Smokestack Studio,
Okay. Great.
which would be it was an image kind of like this.
Yeah, I think you also had, I can't remember which exhibition it was, but you had a few bigger pieces of the prints, and I think this was on the invitation or something because I remember the bigger version of it very vividly,
Yeah.
clearly. Sorry.
And
Um,
I and in the show, there's a show at Harbourfront that I just set up, and there'll be a couple of drawings, like one coin drawing and one plaid drawing,
okay,
at exhibition as well.
perfect.
Um, so you'll see some coin sculptures and some drawings kind of together in the same vitrine at
Beautiful.
Harbor Center.
Great. We'll talk about the exhibition too at the end of it.
Yeah. And so this is my studio a few years later. As you can see, it's like getting a bit messy and piled up. Like I have a bag of spoons on the floor there. There's some like toys on the desk on the left, but I ended up like I just like having everything where I can see it, but it means that things are really piling up. And I really liked when I left Harbourfront and could have like a space of my own that I could leave my tools there overnight. Like that was like a big leap forward. Like, wow, I can have a messy bench or I can leave a project like on the go. It was really like refreshing.
Right.
How I end up with like this kind of place of clutter. But it's not necessarily how I like it, but it's how I work and it's how it ends up happening. And I like having all these little objects on my shelves to like remind me
Yes.
about a particular thing, or I put two things together and like I slowly, after casually looking at it for months and months, like I sometimes projects will develop from that.
Yeah, absolutely. That's why I was wondering if that's why you said you like to see everything, because I've also recently switched into putting everything out because once you put them away and they're in a box, they'll just go into this abyss until you find them when you're moving or you're doing a spring cleaning. And as you said, I feel like for visual people, if you have it out, then you start thinking about it, you start putting it together, and that's great that you're sharing that.
And some of it's just stuff that I like. I just want to see
Yeah,
it.
sure. Yeah, no, that's it. Because I'm gravitating towards that more. I'm like, why don't I just put everything like all the objects or previous projects or something that I don't know, I found interesting out to give me more sort of visual excitement,
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
guess.
We need to find a good system for how we can like
Yes.
have shelves
Yeah,
that won't get dusty.
exactly. And cluttered.
I think, oh yeah, okay, so here's what it looks like
Yeah.
on top of the bench most of the time.
That's a typical bench, I think, for everybody
Yeah.
who is here.
Yeah.
And we would unanimously agree that this is most people's
And
benches.
I
Yeah.
often use my bench top as like a notepad as well. Like I'll sometimes clean it off, but usually it just like slowly wears off. Like I'll make notes with Sharpie or like draw pictures. I don't know if there's other like, yeah, I have like text and writing just to remind me of things or like things that I'm like prototyping, I guess.
Right.
But I'll often have like coins, googly eyes, and like on the, I guess on the upper right, I'm dissecting some lighters,
Oh yeah.
like taking them apart. Like if I find an old one on the side of the road, maybe I can tell there's fluid in there, but it's gotten so wet that the flint doesn't work anymore. I might try and repair that, even though it's a $2 item. It's quite satisfying to like try and fix them, but it's
Yeah.
also kind of sad at the same time. Okay. So then
Oh yeah.
then I had I applied to have a at the Gladstone Hotel. They had a call out for artists to put artwork in hotel rooms, and so
Okay.
I had sort of applied with this, and I thought that maybe I would have to figure out a way to make these into an artwork or presentable, like hang on the wall, and it was accepted. And so then I had to figure out how to actually like make these coins like fit on the wall. I was excited to like show something really, really small inside a hotel room. So what I ended up doing was having these wooden, they're almost like plaques, or they function like frames, like a picture frame, but the coins themselves are have screws on the back that have been like soldered or welded to the back. I
Okay.
try to lift both. And so they bolt right through the wood, and then the wood itself is also can be security hardware to the wall. I had to come up with a little system for that.
Mhm.
But I had friends who were kind enough to help me. And so these were like mounted on a hotel room wall, and I kind of liked that they were so small. They're only maybe 3 or 4 inches in
Okay.
square.
All right.
So it was almost like I kind of, I guess maybe like Easter eggs, kind of an idea
Yeah,
where I like
sure.
sprayed them or put them in really unconventional places.
Okay.
Um, like maybe next to a mirror or near a doorknob or like
Okay.
by a windowsill. And so that sort of forced me to like come up with a way to show these, or that was like more viable or more useful in the future.
Sure. And permanent, I guess.
Yeah, and it was also good because it was very secure, or they could be
Yeah,
very secure.
exactly. Yeah.
And and um and then this one is an image. Oh, I guess it gets cut off by the side, but that's okay. Oh, I skipped ahead a little bit. And these ones were like a pretty fun challenge because they're two of the same coin. Well, how do I explain? Well, it's just I have two coins, one from New
Yes.
Zealand, from
Okay.
Canada, and I was able to make two collages using those two coins, like two separate collages.
It is
Um,
so fascinating how they have lined up perfectly, and it just like even the lineups of the animals have lined up perfectly on this.
Yeah, that was the challenge. And there is
Amazing.
a pile of ones that like don't fit. Um, or like didn't like if I cut like, a tenth of a millimeter off,
Yeah.
uh wouldn't
Okay.
then it wouldn't work. Either the sides wouldn't match or the wings wouldn't match. But oh, it keeps jumping ahead. But
No,
well,
you're
I get
good. It's still on it. Yeah.
um and then for the most part, a lot of the projects like this one and the leaves were pretty innocuous, like pretty inoffensive. But these are also cut from coins, and this is the only project that I had done with coins that really
Okay.
like sort of addresses like currency and themes around like wealth, um,
Right.
and money and its history, and
Power.
um,
Yeah.
in a way that I hadn't really dealt with before. I was like kind of purposely being pretty inoffensive with the works in hopes that I wouldn't get any like questions raised about it. Um,
Right. Okay. Yes.
um, and this is another artist. His name is Adam Milner,
Okay.
and um, I think I have some notes on it here, but I can't find them, so I'll just have
Could
to.
you repeat the name of the artist again so I can maybe put it in the chat?
His name is Adam Milner. That's Milner.
MILNER.
Ner.
Perfect.
Um,
Them, right?
and so I really like his work. There's an Art 21. I don't know if anyone's familiar with those, but there are these really nice videos or vignettes of artists and their practice. And he was one of those artists. And a lot of these things that he's found on the side of the road or just like small incidental items have been treated really like preciously by carved into stones, a little almost like nest for these small objects. And I think I have a close up here, but like you can see there's like some toy glasses, like
Right. Yes.
um, and some gems and teeth and all sorts of
So wait,
found.
he's carving the stones out to put these objects in them, correct?
Yes, and then those stones also have a little nest that they sit in this
Wow.
giant piece of
Okay.
um, stone, like so. These little rocks fit into the giant stone, and I believe he has done that part as well.
Wow.
But yeah, I did fit this in just because it's nice to show like other
Yeah,
artists,
definitely, for sure. And
to
really,
give those watching a little bit of a break from my coin stuff.
I'm trying to find them on. Oh,
I can send you a link to the Art 21 if you want. It's pretty good.
yeah,
It's like
actually, that would be
a
lovely.
7-minute little video. So now we're back in my studio looking at shelves, and they're
Yes.
getting more and more cluttered, especially during the pandemic. I was going for more walks, picking up a lot more things, uh,
Yes.
and thinking more about laser welding and like how when you solder old coins together, they basically lose their patina. And this was sort of motivating me to like try and figure out laser welding or like learn more about it. And then a studio opened up here in Toronto in an Artscape building. It was called Artscape Daniel's Launchpad, and they had a laser welder in their studio, so you could rent time as like a monthly membership,
Right.
and you studio. And I think the first year it was sort of a deal breaker because you needed to sign up and be a member for a year. I didn't know if it would work. And so I was like, oh, okay, no, I can't do that. But then after a while, they changed their membership policy, and you could go month to month. And then I was like, okay, well, I can sign up for a month. And if it works, then great. And if it doesn't, then I can just stop using it or stop going. So maybe I should skip ahead. Oh yeah, here's a little close up of some collected things and altered things. I think I'm laser welding some of these things here, but I'll skip ahead a bit. Oh, I didn't even know that was there. So this is one of the first examples of some laser welding that I had done. So I was able to get in there and try out this machine, and it worked really, really well. And it worked even the best with steel things.
Oh, okay.
It was just easier to use. Like I think it welds nicer even at a full scale. So I was like, okay, this will be a good material to try and practice. Like I need to like get better at using it. So I'll use what works, what material works best before I start using like coins that I've like spent already a lot of time on,
Yeah.
or that were like cut and are kind of a little bit more precious. I'll just use things that I found on the road that I have a lot of.
Yeah, sure. Why not?
And I found like a whole bucket of these basically on the side of the road one day.
Wow.
So I had a lot of these. They're like CO2 capsules.
Yeah, yeah. I
Um,
was going to ask, okay.
they're really hard to cut, but I've got a little bit better.
Yeah, that's
Uh,
how I was wondering. Do you mind telling us how you cut them?
so at first I was using a saw, but it sucked and took forever. It
Yeah.
really worked that well because these ones are stainless steel, and they're like a millimeter or two thick. So it was
Thick.
like
Yeah, sure.
hard, and they're round. So I used basically cutoff discs that are diamond
Oh,
encrusted steel cutoff discs, and those work really well. Like you just like grind through it. You don't cut it, you grind it away.
yeah, okay. Sure. That's what I was wondering. Okay.
And those work really well. I bought ones that were quite large. Like I think the largest one I have is like 60 millimeters,
Okay.
centimeters that fits in the Fordham.
Okay.
And then I can use it like a grinding wheel, and steel grinds actually really well. Like it
Yeah,
works,
it does. Yeah.
grinds faster than like silver or copper
Oh,
or
copper. Yeah.
brass. Like it's just nicer in that way to work it that way. Um, and so these were sort of some shapes that I tried to like play around with and try and um, put together.
They're fantastic. Yeah.
And these ones are like sort of set of experiments with staples in the
Yes.
background, and in the foreground are it looks copper, but they're actually copper plated steel,
Steel. Yeah.
and
Right. For this
and they're thimbles.
symbols. Yeah.
And so these were made not actually very long ago. And these ones I have in that exhibition at Harbourfront Center
Oh, perfect. Okay.
now. And this is another sort of example where like I really like these little objects, but they're almost too small to be sculptures. And they're not quite jewelry yet. I think they have pretty good potential to be jewelry, but I just
Yeah.
haven't quite figured it out yet how they will be jewelry. But they're nice little objects to hold, and they have really nice like optical qualities. Like you can see the one
They really
on.
do. I've seen these from up close. I don't know. I always struggle with this too, in the sense that are they too small to be sculptures? Because there's really no, because I would love to have two or three of these on. I collect a lot of knickknacks. I like to curate all my shelves in my house, but it's a struggle, I think, for a lot of artists, where there's boundaries with things. Because for me, these are small sculptures. But I guess we also always want to have a sort of purpose or a better fit for the objects that we create. But honestly, when I look at these, for me, even though they're small, because Micah had them all laid out he did a presentation at George Brown too about a month ago, and he had these objects out. And as he said, they're fairly small. They're staples, so you can imagine how small they are. But for me, they were just so the optical illusion and the mesmerizing effect of them just like overshadows the size of them. So for me,
I think it's about context, really. Like they can't really exist as sculptures. And I say that they're too small, but it's that they need more context. Like
sure.
when
Oh, okay.
generally speaking, when we interact with artwork, it's in a gallery or maybe it's
Yes,
a museum. Um, at George Brown, it was like a special case where it was a show and tell. Like people can pick things up,
exactly.
and that's how I interact with things that I like. So I feel like art should be the same way, but in some ways it isn't, and I need to find solutions for things.
Yeah.
Uh, Ideally, these would be just like handheld objects that you would like sort of play with and use as almost like meditation objects or something.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, it's just hard to find a context. Like they need more of a context before they can be
Sure.
uh like resolved artworks or sculptures.
Yeah, no, you're right. I mean, in an ideal world, I would love for one of them to just hover around me as I'm walking, and just be there. But I mean, that would be my ideal world. But honestly, I think can you just briefly talk about the one at the bottom right with the slight curve? Did you have to curve the staples to get that shape?
So what I would do is they're all six-sided. So I would make each sort of unit with
Mhm.
two sets of staples overlapping each other at 90 degrees. Uh,
Oh, right. Okay.
once I make the grid part, or like each facet, then they kind of can be independent. Like the one in this lower center next to it,
Yes.
be the same size staple, but just treated differently. Like that
If
one,
okay.
I just put them together each side and welded them as is. But for the one on the lower right that you pointed out, I've basically pinched it. So
Pinch.
after I made a little cuboid shape, like you could bring the edges together. Like hopefully that makes sense. But basically, you could bring the edges together of the pointy part of the staples, and they would all
Yeah.
meet, and that created a curve on
A
the
curve.
gridded.
Okay. That makes total sense. That makes perfect sense. Yes.
And then so the center is a little bit smaller, but they still all meet together.
Okay.
And the one above it it's harder to see, but that one is actually spread apart. So the spiky parts of the staple have been like pulled apart, and it
Okay.
actually becomes a little bit wider.
Right.
Um,
Okay.
and then
Good.
I do have a little video here,
Okay.
so people can see like the like optical effects of
Yes.
the overlapping grids and moire patterns.
My God, it's so satisfying. Even the negative space, it's also like perfect geometric. Everything is, this makes me happy. Okay.
So yeah, so after I discovered the laser welder and using that, it really like I was intended to do coins and keep the patina of coins and have them laser welded together, but I really got sidetracked with all the things small steel things and wondering like what could I do with those and
Yeah.
could I make those into things, and it was a good practice or technical exercise, but also like I really enjoyed the outcome of the things that could be made. And this was sort of another like spontaneous experiment where like, oh, I wonder if this will work, or just sort of seemed like a silly idea to try and work out. And Bic makes a lot of different products. They make pens and lighters. So I thought it would be funny to try and combine some of these things together. And so this is a pocket clip it's actually from a Sharpie pen, but it's welded at the top to the lighter, so you could clip it on to the outside of your pocket instead of carrying it on the inside, I suppose.
Micah, sorry, I have a question. I think it's regarding from Lindsay McDonald. I think it's about the staple series. I just saw it. It says, how do you position them so perfectly while welding? Do you make jigs?
Oh, well, you can just kind of hold them in place. Well, I guess maybe I should say, if you look, I don't know if I have yeah, like if we look at this one, it
Yeah.
looks like a perfect grid, but that's because so when I weld them together, I weld it as a solid, like how when you have like staples are all glued together, I cut it to the length of a square, and then I overlap them together, and I only weld every second one, and then I punch out every second one. So it sort of stays its own little jig. Every second staple I remove. So I kind of use it as a placeholder to get all the spacing correct. So it stays a perfect grid. And then if I do that, then and I make 6 of those, they'll all, because they're staples and they're made to be all the same, they're just going to be the same shape. And so I just kind of eyeball when I start the first 2 sides, whether or not it's 90 degrees. And I'll know it's 90 degrees when I add the third one because they don't line up.
Okay.
Um,
Wow.
so, and it's probably, if you look at it long enough, you would see it's not actually perfect, but it's perfect. Like it's close enough that
It's
it
close
looks
enough. Yeah, no, it is perfect.
like sometimes the staples don't really line up, and you can kind of tell in this video because they're not all actually welded. I'll play the video again, see
Yeah,
if
I would love that.
you see the spaces where they meet. I think there's one side that isn't finished yet, and they're just like slightly askew. I think it's this side. You can see it's open now. It's in the front there.
Okay. Okay.
But
Okay.
because you're just welding, anything will hold it in place is fine. You can use tape. Sometimes I'm using like masking tape as a little holder because the object I'm welding gets too hot. So I just need to hold it in place for like 30,
Right. Okay.
like 10 seconds, but it's too small for me to hold in my fingers. So I stick it to a piece of tape, and the tape is like a little tab or a holder. It's pretty nice in that way. But then that studio Artscape shut down, and I can no longer use a laser welder.
Right. Yes.
And
That's a whole other ballgame. Yes.
yeah, so I just started to learn how to use it, and then it kind of got taken away.
Okay.
And so these are matchsticks that I found inside the matchbox that were like stuck together all in the same sort of flawed way. And
Okay.
after doing a bunch, I didn't show any of those, but I used to do a lot of projects with matchsticks. I made little dioramas inside matchboxes, and I would use the sticks as like a hardwood floor. And so I would find these a lot, and I just started keeping them. So I have quite a few, but I use that as like a prompt for playing with lighters. Like if a lighter is the original Strike Anywhere match, then maybe there could be a factory flaw for those as well. And so I messed around with this idea a little bit of having the lighters welded together,
Okay.
like and then that led
Oh,
to
yes.
trying to make a safety cage,
Mm-hmm.
and welding it to the top. And then I thought it looked a little bit like architectural or like a tower, maybe it's like a lighthouse looking sort of
Yeah.
tiny version. I'm always thinking about things in scale or things being small or seeming larger, like with those staple things. They kind of remind me of like public sculpture or like really formal public sculpture if they were 20 times larger and you could walk inside them. But anyway, so I because I thought it looked a little bit architectural, I decided to try and paint the bases of the lighters, and also just to like disguise them or make it a little bit more like fun, I guess, or more personal. So these have been sanded and painted and then sanded smooth again. And I kind of based them
Oh,
around.
okay.
If you're from Nova Scotia, or if you live near an airport, some of these things would be familiar, but these are smokestacks that
Right.
are like
Okay. Yes.
really, really common. Or if you've driven to the airport, you would see buildings like on the right side there, these like large striped objects. But this is sort of an example, like what I was saying before, of where I would use a little jig and I would make it usually out of Legos,
Okay.
just because it's what I have on hand. But really, you can use anything. But I think Legos
Those
are
are
pretty
great. Yes.
good, except you have to work in like really designated increments.
Yes.
Might not
Sure.
always be.
And yes. Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah.
But yeah, it's always good to cheat if you can find like a fast, easy way to do something. Um, yeah, I basically catered the grids to match the Legos so that I could use the Legos. Like the spaces in between are kind of matched up with the color. So I used different colors so I could see the lines a little bit better. And
Oh, okay. Yeah. I have another question about the lighter image with the cage on top. Are those are the openings big enough for a cigarette to fit through? Just asking for the smokers because I feel like the the cigarette won't pass through or anything you're trying to light won't pass through those the openings, or would it? Or
it does. That
it
was yeah, that was also one of my facetious requirements was that like a, a, a cigarette could fit through.
would fit through? Yeah. Yeah,
Well,
because
I did make quite a few. Well, not that many, like five, I think. And some of the spaces are a little bit too small, but there's always a space in the middle um, for cigarettes to poke through,
yeah.
but fingers,
Because
but they're too
I
small
always
for.
also find there is a bit of very witty humor with your work at points. And I was like, I wonder if a cigarette, because if it won't be able to pass through those holes, it would be a very sort of fun play on the idea of a lighter that won't actually let you light your cigarettes, but you've thought about all the things, and if a cigarette can pass through those holes, then it would be because I was just thinking in my head, I was like, that would be quite an annoying thing for somebody for, just as a play with objects and the actual function. So that's why. Um,
I
great.
was hoping this that was one of my goals this semester. Like as I was preparing for the exhibition at Harbourfront, and I got to work at George Brown College during the winter semester and using their laser welder. I did think that I could work more on these cages and kind of based on these smokestacks. I was like, well, it'd be really nice if I could, make three of these lighters and the cages would be attached, and I could have these differently shaped cages with
Yeah.
three lighters on them that were painted this way. And I was like, that would be really satisfying to do. And I did think that was, and well, now it's starting, for some reason, it seems like it's starting to look, it would look like jewelry at that point, or like, oh, that's starting to look like contemporary brooches. Like maybe that should be some
Yeah.
kind of like brooch.
Yeah, why not?
I don't know how heavy it would be, but I would still like to try it sometime. But I didn't make it that far. I got distracted with other projects, I
With
guess.
other projects, yes, of course. That's it happens to the best of us. I'm gonna turn my camera on. I think maybe now would be a good time to also touch on the exhibition at Harbourfront Center. I believe the show is already up, but the opening date, Micah, is May 30th.
Yes,
Yeah.
along with the 36 brooch show.
Yeah, along with the 36 brooches at Harbourfront, there'll be a big opening party. I think it will be very fun. So if you're in Toronto, please come down, and Micah's work will be there. As he said, a few of his prints with the coin work, and you said the lighters.
Yeah, I think yes, I have some lighters in the show too, and some newer works, and kind of a mix.
Perfect. Yeah, the show also goes on. If you missed the opening on the 30th, the show does go on till September 2nd. So we'll be at Harbourfront Center. So spread the word. I think it would be a fantastic show. Very excited to see Micah's work there. And if you're coming there, we'll see you there. And it is 7:32. So we're gonna open it up. If there's anybody who has any questions, I know a lot of people were in and out. A few people have left, but the people that are here, I'm going to open up my chat. If there are any questions, comments, anything that you guys would like to share, now is the time. Also, thanks for joining us. We really appreciate it. And as I said, for the next series, we'll be announcing them on our social media. I hope I'm keeping my fingers crossed for our next guest. Also is an amazing person, but I still don't have any confirmation, so I can't share much. But keep an eye on it for the next sessions. Any questions? Rana, this was absolutely fascinating. Thank you. I know I was very excited for this presentation by Micah because he's also a very good storyteller. And his work is definitely very, very refreshing.
Thanks.
Oh,
Thanks,
you're
Pasha.
welcome. Lindsay asks, Micah, would you ever consider an inversion, like making the humble objects in precious material? Great question.
I don't know what do you mean? I don't know how. Or I feel, let's see, what have I done that might fit that?
I mean, Lindsay, correct me if I'm wrong, but you're asking if like the staple objects like could be made in gold, like all the staples are out of actual gold, and then he makes a bigger object out of gold. That's what I'm imagining.
Well, maybe I feel like for some reason it feels like cheating somehow to me.
It
Um,
looks like the smokestack could be mother of pearl and carnelian. Okay, yes, of course. Everybody, I love that Lindsay asked that. Lindsay is a big mother of pearl advocate, I guess. So yeah, she says it looked like the smokestack could be mother of pearl and carnelian. Okay,
yeah, that would be pretty nice.
yeah,
Sure, I'll go
it
back.
would be.
Yeah.
That is
Um,
actually it's a very good point. Yeah,
it's just plastic,
yeah, it's just
plastic
like
acrylic paint.
we can
Um,
imagine it being. Yeah, but that's actually a very good suggestion. Julie Begin also says, thanks so much for sharing. This was such a treat.
you're
Uh,
welcome. Thank
yeah.
And for those, I don't think anyone's from Alberta listening or watching, but I do have some coin collages in a show in Alberta Craft Council Gallery at the moment. That's in Edmonton right now until, let's see, until June 15th. And that one is also going to travel to Calgary and be in the Alberta Craft Council Gallery there from July 6th till August 31st. And
Thanks for telling us,
that's in a show called Minutia, and there's lots of other like small object based artworks.
Perfect. I'm gonna put that on the MetalAid Instagram for people to also if they're in Alberta. And this video, I don't think there is much to be edited. Um, any more questions, anyone? And really thank you for joining us today. It's really nice to have you all. And Micah, this was a pleasure. Thank you.
Yeah, great.
I really
Thanks.
appreciate it. Thanks for your time. Thanks for all your lovely
Thanks.
photos that you shared and your beautiful work and your process. I think a lot of people were fascinated. And we look forward to seeing you I look forward to seeing you at the opening on the 30th and everybody else who's coming there. Please come say hi. Yeah, that's it, I guess, if there's
Okay.
no questions.
You don't have any more questions, Pasha? You sure?
I have a lot of questions.
Oh, we don't have time. Okay,
I
yeah,
am.
right.
Yeah, we have a few more minutes. No, I'm kidding. I think I'm all good. There's no more questions at the chat. I think I've already asked too many questions from you. I know you've had a long day, and you have a baby to attend to. So I'm gonna let you go, and then I'm gonna ask my personal questions from you later when I see you.
Okay.
Excellent.
Well, thanks, Belton.
Actually,
Thanks.
hold on. Before you go, maybe this question is something on a lot of people's minds. When you do your pierce work in your coin art, what sublate number do you exactly use?
Oh, yeah.
This is a
Yeah, that
technical
was a question
question.
that some students asked this semester, and I wasn't, yeah, I'm really not that picky about it.
You're not picky?
I chose one size. I was like, oh, this is kind of middle of the road. I'll just use this for everything so that I can get used to how the blade behaves. Because sometimes, different brands or different sizes will snap easier or faster, or like you can put certain tension on them that you can't other sizes. So I think
guess,
it's
yeah. Sorry, go on.
like 04 or 40.
Okay. Yeah, 4/0. Because I also was wondering, the coins must come in different material, right? In different thicknesses. So you probably might have to change saw blades here and there.
No, I just use the same size, no matter how. I know you're supposed to like measure and like match up the
I
number of teeth per inch to like the thickness of your material, but I don't really do that.
This is really great to hear
I'm
because
not
I always
like,
feel like everybody else is so on it with these things, and I'm not, because I don't measure. I just eyeball, looks great, cuts, not a big line. Great.
well, and I know the steel is going to be a little bit harder, but like the blade still behaves the same way, and the material, just having the material as a variable, I feel like is enough. But maybe now, maybe since I've gotten so used to it, maybe I should try like using the correct one.
And
But I do
also, yeah, sorry, go
really
on.
use this if it's really, really like sometimes I'll go around the edges, like for the flowers, I'll do it all in one size. But then if there's any like really acute angles, I'll go back in with like a small, like a slightly smaller size, like a 6, and try and make it a little bit more pointy. But for the most part, like I sometimes will use the saw blade as a file as well. So after I've cut, like I'll go in at a bit of an angle and try and like trace or refine it a little bit. And you can't do that if the blade will break really easily. So
Right.
I just use the same size. And sometimes the coins are very thick and they're made to be really durable. So they're steel alloys and
Right.
are really difficult, really hard to cut sometimes. But
Because also, again, just from my own knowledge, I think most of the coins that are recently being made are mostly copper or brass and then plated. Is that right? Or tin?
Well, do you want the long answer or the short answer? There's a whole
We have
variety.
5 minutes.
There's a bit of a variety. Like Canadian coins are like double plated, so there's like a copper layer in the middle.
Okay.
Well, not in the middle, but like on the outside edge. So
Okay,
they're like
sure.
struck in like a copper nickel alloy, and then or steel, and then they have a copper layer, and then they have like another like maybe a like copper nickel, like a silvery or like chrome or like nickel kind of color. So if you were to like sand them, you would see a little like copper ring. But I only know that from like trial and error.
From trial
And
and
like,
error. That's what I'm asking you. Yeah, yeah.
yeah. And like other coins, sometimes they have like a really, really thin layer in the middle of copper. Like some, I can't remember which European country it is. I think Sweden has a really fine like line in the middle that you can't see from the outside, but if you cut through it, you can. And the United States, they have like a system where they kind of look like little sandwiches or like little all sorts licorice. Like the layers are actually quite even, and that there's like a copper layer, and then the outsides are like a copper nickel or like nickel color. So when you cut them in half, they really do have like a sandwich kind of look to them. Around the edges, it gets a little bit smeared, just because of the way they're manufactured. They're like stamped.
Right.
But yeah, there's a lot of different materials, and you kind of, I feel like if you just like simplify your tools, you become a little bit more intuitive about the materials.
The material. Yeah, right.
And then you can recognize the differences a little bit easier
Yeah,
if
exactly.
you just use the same tools.
There's one more question.
Oh, there's one more question.
Yes, I think it got directed just to me. Sorry, I'll mute and I'll send it to you.
Yeah, please. Or you can just read it,
Yeah,
Lindsay.
This is from Amy Rogers.
Uh-huh.
Says, how important is your non-metal work to your process? Your drawings and printmaking, for example.
well, you want me to pick favorites? Like I need to prioritize them? Yeah, I don't know. I feel like sometimes it depends on what I'm working with or the things that I'm familiar with. Like there's some things in the upcoming show that are carved out of brick, and I got pretty into that. There was a couple weeks this semester where the laser welder was broken, and I was like, oh, this is a great opportunity for me to like go back to this like brick carving idea I had, where like I wanted to make a little brick house based on the Monopoly house. So I tried to carve that, and then I realized, oh no, it's a long story. But the Monopoly house is not red, it's green, so it didn't really make any sense. But I sort of started figuring out how to carve other things, and it was using the same tools like diamond encrusted steel cutoff wheels, same that I was getting used to using for steel. So like it seemed like a good trend, or like it was easy to transition, or like, oh, I already have the same tools that like will cut brick, glass, and ceramic. So it was like a nice like refreshing change. But usually it sort of depends. Like some projects need to be made out of metal because they're made out of metal. Like the original source, like the coins and stuff like that. Or like I would think it needs to be a drawing if I can't figure out how it's a piece of sculpture or jewelry. And sometimes things like seem like they're better off in another material. Like I also ended up carving some screws, and I wanted to carve screws out of brick so that there would be a bit of a joke about it being like a masonry screw. It's
Right.
not for masonry, but it's made out of brick. So by default, it was like a masonry screw. So there's like a back and forth, and it sort of depends on what I'm getting really involved in at the time.
Time, yeah. Right. That was great. We might get cut off at any second, so if it does close, I'm sorry and I apologize. If there are no more questions, we're gonna say an official goodbye.
Okay.
All good? Perfect. Thank you again. Thanks everyone for your questions. Thanks, Micah, for your time. And we will see you guys next time.